Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on a Django application, and I walk you through the process of updating the app, adding features to the app, fixing bugs, doing all the things that you would do if you were going to maintain a software as a service that serves real customers. My application does do that. It serves homeschool families, and we're going to continue on that project this evening and work through a variety of issues. There's a bunch of things that are on my to-do list that have not been getting the attention they probably need, so we're going to follow through on those. So you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. Otherwise, we'll just get to it. I was looking at the list before the stream, trying to figure out what am I going to be working on. Oh, Bella, welcome. Glad you're able to join in for this evening, even if just for a short time. I think your hours were on a different timeline that doesn't let you stay on very long. So welcome. So I was looking at this list of issues on GitHub and trying to figure out what do I want to do. And I'm at this point where we've done a couple streams where we're fixing some usability problems, and I'm still not ready to really start a new project. So I'm going to continue on with just whatever's on this list. And I've noticed that one of the things, if there was a theme in here, there's some things that I just need to clean up that have kind of been hanging out. Some upgrades that need to be done, and so on. So I thought we'd start with that. We do a theme around some deployment stuff, and then if we get more time, then we can move on to some of these smaller issues. But otherwise, I want to do some of that area. So I think what I want to start with is I set my site up so that I get package upgrades, and this is something that's very common with GitHub repositories. There's a service called Dependabot, and Dependabot can essentially monitor the package manifest that you have. In the case of Python, that's commonly a requirements.txt file, and it can update those packages at whatever frequency you want. For me and my preferences of how often do I want to be dealing with this stuff, I set it to be monthly. So at the first of every month, I get just a stream of PR, pull request of here are packages to upgrade. And I've talked about this many times, but I have 100% test coverage on my application. And the benefit of doing that is that it gives me some confidence that if I'm doing a package upgrade, as long as the pull request is passing within reason, I'm able to merge that and get all the package upgrades. So what you can see on my terminal here is that I did just do an install with my local stuff. I don't have to do that as part of my process, but I think what I'm going to start with is deploying. So I'm going to run a makefile command, and I guess I should show off what the makefile is so you know what this command is going to do. It's really nothing fancy. It's make deploy is the command that does a git push to Heroku main, which is my remote that is configured with Heroku, the service that I use. And anytime I push to that remote, Heroku identifies that as a deployment action and will do a deployment to my service. So let's do that. It doesn't take terribly long. There are a few things that go on, and so I'm going to let that run, and then we'll talk about what else is, maybe some pieces that are in here, and then what else I want to actually do. So first things first, what's going on right now. You can see that it starts off with telling us what, and I guess before this scrolls off, there we go. What is it actually going to build? What infrastructure is it on? And notice the things that it does is it does a clone and it pulls the submodules. So there's some submodules that I have for my themes, for my blog. So it's doing that kind of clone. It's getting all of the code ready. And then it's saying, I'm going to be building on the Heroku 20 stack. And that's actually one of the things that I want to update today. So Heroku uses the Ubuntu long-term support images, and those images come out every 2 years. So this is basically the long-term support versions are in, I believe, the April release, the 2004 version. So essentially, my website right now is running on code from 2020. From April of 2020, which, as you can imagine, quite a bit has changed. So Heroku periodically has stack updates as an option. So essentially you have to opt into it because maybe you need to change your software in order to make it work with a new stack. So I think what we're going to try and do first is to upgrade to the Heroku 2020 to the 22 stack, which is the 2022 version of Ubuntu, as the base in the system. You can see that there are some different build packs that are used. Hopefully none of those will have any problems. I don't anticipate there being any, but that'll be part of this exercise, figuring out, do we have everything up to date to make this work? That's what I want to work through. So I wanted to start off, the reason I started off with a deploy is I wanted to make sure that we're working from a clean slate with everything up to date as possible already, and that all of that stuff is working, so that I'm not deploying two separate versions, so that I am deploying two separate versions, because what I don't want to have happen is take the upgrade to the Heroku stack and a new set of packages at that same time, and then have some kind of failure. Because in that case, what might happen is that I won't know what the problem was, and it would be hard to debug. Was it because I upgraded some package that was wrong, or was it because of the stack that was wrong? So by separating those activities and making it two separate deploys, it gives me confidence that where errors might be. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go to the site, just kind of kick the tires. There's not much really that I do to verify this. I kind of figure if it's managed to come up at all, then it's probably in a good state, and it has. So I feel pretty good about the package upgrades, which leads us to the Heroku part. Now, I think that the Heroku stack upgrade probably could be done from the command line. So there's a Heroku command line tool that comes with a bunch of commands. I find that it's a fairly overwhelming set of things, and I suspect one of these will tell you how to upgrade your stack in here. But honestly, I don't spend enough time with the Heroku command line and the Heroku system. I'm not using this as my daily deployment stuff. This is a side project. So I kind of know enough Heroku commands to be useful, but I don't remember all of the nitty gritty. So what we need to do is we're going to go to the Heroku documentation for stacks. And maybe did I include a link in here? I did not. That would have been useful. So let's go to Google and look for Heroku Stacks and get up the page here, which will give us more details about this. So it says, and it sort of reiterates what I just told you. It tells you that the Heroku stacks are based off of these different Ubuntu versions. I don't run with a container, so I'm not worried about that. And so I'm on this version, and it is supported still for a good number of years, and that corresponds with how long the Ubuntu long-term support releases are. I believe it's every 5 years. So, well, that's obviously, you could do some math here. 2020 to 2025, 2022 to 2027. So that's the support lifetime for Ubuntu, and Heroku is just taking advantage of that. But I find there to be value. I don't want to hang on to a long-term support release longer than necessary, especially as I try and keep all of my packages updated. It's usually more convenient just to stay up with the latest version of Python and all of that. Plus, I don't know how much you keep on top of the Python ecosystem, but there are some really cool and exciting speed improvements coming out just by upgrading Python. So when it comes time to upgrade to Python 3.11, I think there's a certain amount of percentage jump, and there's also another big boost with 3.12. Yeah, that's a good question, Bello. What is my ideal deployment environment when scalability is a top priority? That is a complicated question, maybe in ways you don't realize, because there are multiple dimensions of scalability, and it sort of depends on what your service is doing. If you expect you're going to have kind of a Hacker News, or back in the day Slashdot, that kind of site where you're expected to get a big flood of traffic, then what you're looking for is scalability at the web tier of what requests are actually served to users. Even that becomes a difference in what is your website doing. For instance, the Hacker News site, or maybe Hacker News is a bad example because there's so many comments, but let's say you have a generic news site, like you're the New York Times. and you have anonymous readers, although they're charging lately. So let's pretend you have a fictional news site that has content that does not vary per person. You could get a ton of scalability out of setting up some kind of cache in front of your stuff, so that you could have a web server that will render a page and render a news article, and only has to do that one time and put together all the page elements, and then takes all of that HTML and stuffs it into a cache. And then in that scenario, like subsequent visitors, whenever they're visiting the page, will actually get the HTML out of the cache after it's already been rendered. So that is way easier to do than having a Python web server, a Django, or whatever, render that HTML over and over again. So there's different strategies that you would apply to get different types of scalability. Another big dimension to think about is like, well, maybe your site isn't about serving tons of requests to lots of people. Maybe it's about doing lots of stuff in the background for your users, and that stuff could even vary. It could be Jennifer, I'll get to your question or your comment there in just a second. It could be about you're doing what's the stable diffusion, like the new image generation thing. So you need a lot of computational power. So scaling that is going to be a very different kind of problem to solve versus the scaling frequent requests for stuff that doesn't change frequently. So I guess, Bello, if you have a more specific type of website that you would like and use case in mind, I'd be happy to try and dig into that. But otherwise, it's really dependent on how your project is. Jennifer, I will be working on a bunch of random stuff. I'm about to actually update my Heroku setup for my website, so that's going to be the priority. And then I have some other small issues of packages I want to upgrade and such like that. And why not AWS? I tell this to lots of people, but I'm a one-person team, and AWS, while a great tool and great technology, I use it in my day job, requires more work, and it requires a certain amount of investment to work specifically on plugging all the AWS pieces together. And so while you can get economies of scale from using AWS because they do have a lot of cost leverage, using something like Heroku that is a platform and does a lot of things for you is really beneficial. So I make that trade-off of some cost versus my time is really what it gets down to. So yeah, that's my thought there. And I guess even Heroku, like lately, I don't know if y'all caught the news, but Heroku on my birthday, in fact, November the 28th, will be shutting down their free tier and only being paid after that, which is fine if you know that you want to start a business and use Heroku, but it's kind of a strike against it in terms of like experimenting and trying something out. So there might be other services you might want to try, like fly.io and those sort of things. Can I make a video on cloud cost estimations? Probably not appropriate for the content that I'm doing. I can tell you straight off the bat that my cost for Heroku here is fixed every month. It's $16.03. That's the number. And it has been so like that for many months. It actually went down a little bit when they did some changes about how they charge tax and stuff for me. I'm not really sure why. I didn't research what was Heroku's logic with doing that. But for my small project, it is a very fixed cost. I pay for the website and I pay for the database. So the web worker is like $5 and the database is like $10. So that's roughly. So that's how I think about it. On the other hand, like my company at work has a very large AWS bill, and I don't think I can actually disclose the numbers there. But let's just say there's a lot of machine learning, there's a lot of GPUs involved. It's very expensive. How many users do I have? Actually, the service is really small. So there's less than 10. I have a handful of paying customers, and then I have people that are trialing at any time. So I'm not trying to make a gigantic service here, which is why I can keep my costs really low and fixed. Bello, I'm glad that helps you with your understanding of some scaling stuff with using caching. Thanks for thinking of me for happy birthdays on Twitter. Appreciate that. All right, so let's move on to think about actually how do we actually upgrade this stack? Can we test it out, make sure that everything's still working? Is there anything that I need to test? I think that there's some risk here, and the risk possibly is that when I try and do a stack upgrade and then deploy, there's a potential that because of some package differences that something may fail in that way. I'm hopeful that's not the case, and that this will be a very boring, you did one deploy and it was done, and so on. I did not add Google Analytics to my real site. I've done that in the past, but I decided I'm tired of tracking people. It's not really what I'm after. I really would rather just talk to the users and see what do you want. And I found that for my small audience, that has been far better for actually delivering an experience that matters to them, and I don't have to track them, which is nice. Okay, so let's look down farther through here. And so we've got the list of Heroku stacks that we've got, and we have the setting for the default stacks. Oh, there's the command Heroku stack. So here we can see, we should be able to see that it should say Heroku 20. There we go, Heroku 20. And there'll probably be some command to migrate. So it might be as simple as copying this. Let's just copy paste it because sure, why not? And then after we set the stack, it even tells us we need a redeploy for this to take effect. So let's try the deploy. We're going to watch the deploy message and see what it says. I am on the East Coast on the United States, so it is currently 9:21 p.m. Oh, come on. How do I do a redeploy? It is already, okay. So it doesn't like the fact that I am up to date. So the remote, so this is the get remote says you're already up to date. There's nothing to trigger. So Heroku is not even noticing that. I guess they normally have people update a stack with pending changes, which I think is kind of weird. So let's do a git commit with an empty commit, I think. Wow. There's a way to basically add a new commit to your repository without actually changing anything. And it's something I don't use frequently, but it is useful. And I'm on a new computer, so I don't have it readily available in my history. All right, git commit dash. Well, that's the same command. Is there a way to get more? I can't believe there's more stuff here. Man git help. There it is. Okay. Oh, come on. Am I just not seeing it? Those are the options. Oh, no wonder. I'm doing the man page for git help. I need to do the man page for git commit. Allow empty. I did empty. It's allow empty. So if we do git commit allow empty, GC is a shortcut for me here. I apparently have some upgrades to pre-commit here, which is why that stuff is running. And I'm going to say trigger deploy. You do need to give it a message. Well, it looked like maybe there was one where you didn't even need to give it a message. What was that other? That was that second one. Allow empty. Like allow empty, this command is primarily used by, okay, whatever. It allows you to create a commit with an empty commit message without plumbing like commands. Okay. All right, let's let that run. Should be enough. Have I learned PHP web development before Django? Well, technically, yes. But I did PHP not on a framework. The first time I did PHP was in college. So I was working on, so I went to the University of Virginia, and back then, this was 2002 to 2006, mind you, you could get, every student was given essentially a home directory on the Virginia website that you could use to store a certain amount of files. I think you had up to 75 megabytes of storage was like all that you were allotted. Some number that was like shockingly low for today's standards. But it was useful to like just toy around with stuff, and you could put HTML on it, and that's actually where I learned about the web, how to develop on the web at all. What was the tool I used? My very first website was a piece of junk, but it was my own, and I used a tool, Microsoft Designer. Oh no, that wasn't the name. HTML. It was an ancient tool now by today's standards. Doesn't really matter. FrontPage. This is it. Brings back memories. Here it is, and actually this was the version I had it on. It was a Windows XP box. This is probably about the year. So this screenshot's probably like the exact version that I was doing this on. And so FrontPage would allow you to like build HTML, like write stuff, and it would write all of the HTML tags for you. So if you went and eventually looked at the HTML tags, it was just trash. Like it looked awful. So I started out with that first of like, here's my site. I figured out how to do background images, and I had a repeating tile, so you could have like, I think I used a sandy beach like sunset scene that repeated. It looked horrible, but it was something that I could play with. Eventually, I discovered that the web servers at the school had PHP loaded on them. And so as I evolved from a single page application built to FrontPage, and then I switched over to my own HTML code, and then I switched over to an iframe site, which, you know, like had my navigation in one iframe and another in another iframe. And yeah, it was silly. At some point though, I realized like I had a bunch of repeated elements on my page, and I realized that there was PHP there. So my use of PHP at the time only extended to using the include, I guess it's a keyword, to like take chunks of HTML content and stick them right back in the page, so I didn't have to repeat them. So that was the only point. Yeah, just flew away my college days. I suppose that's true. But I did have a girlfriend, and she's now my wife. So we dated for 3 years in college, and then got married after graduating. Anyway, so that's my PHP experience, which is not really comparable to Django, because Django was many, many years later, and it was frameworks, and I had gone to work professionally, and I had like done a lot of professional development and really learned a ton about the web in the intervening time. So my really junky like college websites that use PHP versus what I was able to build as a professional later, like going through a master's degree in computer science at Hopkins, like that was just worlds apart in what I needed. So yeah, I can't really draw like a line that's very clear between PHP and Django. All right, let's take a look at how that deploy went, and maybe we're done. I'm not seeing like any error messages right away. So let's scan through here and see what happened. We're on Heroku 22 now. That's good. We didn't change anything about our build packs. So the build packs are things that are used when building the website, and they're usually for like different languages. And so for my site, I need 3. There is one for building. There's the first one, which you can see right here, Node.js, is for using some JavaScript stuff to build my CSS files with Tailwind. So that's what's doing the job here, and we can see that right on this line. It's building my. If I can triple click on it, come on, there we go. It's building my site CSS file, which is the one CSS file for my app, and then following that, once you get past that section, there is a build pack for Hugo, which is a tool-specific build pack to use the blog technology that I use. So my website has a blog, like a product blog that I can use to announce changes and stuff, and that is built statically using Hugo, so I don't have to power that with a database or use any kind of database editor. I can just write it in Markdown. And then the final build pack is the most logical one with a Django app. It's the Heroku Python build pack. So those are the things that we see in here. Now, none of those build packs actually changed. I'm not using a different version of Python. I'm not using a different version of JavaScript. And I'm not using a different version of Hugo. So all I was changing in this equation was the operating system. And the versions on top of the operating system actually stayed consistent, which helps increase the chance that the changes we made did what we expected them to. So it's detected that we're changing the stack, so it cleared the cache. It was smart enough to do that, which is good. So it has to download all the packages again and then rebuild them against and recompile them. Thankfully, the build pack for, or the base operating system has a lot of the same base packages, so we didn't have any problems with libraries that I might have expected to have problems with, like the PDF generation stuff. And then all of that stuff compressed, that's all good. So I think everything worked. So the only thing left to do is to actually verify. Now, it's one thing to trust or to see the output and see that there were no errors. It is another thing to actually check that the site is working. And it is. So I think because we're on 2022 now, or Heroku 22, it opens up the possibility of moving to more upgraded versions of Python. Although the Python support might not be ready yet, but this is where it would be, I'm sure, is like on Heroku 22. So let's search for Python in here and see what versions they have. So you can see like where they start to drop support. Like these older versions are only on these older stacks, but it doesn't matter. I think I'm on Python 3.9. Whoops. What's going on there? That was not right. I'm definitely on a Git repository. Okay. And then runtime. No, I updated to 3.10. So I am on the latest stuff. I'm even on their latest supported version. So I think we're done with Soul Issue. That was easy. Cool. Done. All right, let's move on to another thing that I've been wanting to upgrade. This next thing that I want to upgrade is a bit riskier. And it's riskier because I don't have tests for my JavaScript code. And frankly, I don't really have that much JavaScript. So I've got htmx at the heart of my application. And the htmx is, it's a good tool. And thankfully, it's a very stable tool from what I can tell. So you can see, here's my process for like what's going to give me confidence that I'm doing this safely. And for that, it was to review the htmx changelog. So if you go to htmx, I'll just search for that, get there quickly. And they used to, I couldn't find it earlier. I was looking at this evening, but there used to be like a changelog on the website, and either that has moved, like it just doesn't seem to be listed anymore. Like I didn't find it on this page, which is the documentation, and I couldn't find it in the reference section. It just wasn't listed there. It's not on the examples, it's not on the talk page, and it's not on the essays. So it used to be somewhere, but seems to be gone. So what I did is I went to the actual GitHub repository, and this is where I looked at the changelog file. Let's see, are they moving it here? Oh, look at that. It might be also here. But this one is, this is not a very helpful way to read this, I think, which is probably why, I don't know. Yeah, this is very low level version of this. and I would not read a release notes. So a lot of open source projects, you can inspect. A well-maintained project will have some kind of information for consumers of the library or whatever the software is to make sure you know what's changing between versions, because there's some risk for you as somebody who uses an open source package of you want to know, like, has anything changed that's going to affect my code that's going to cause things to break? And so if you can look for, it's often called changelog or releases, or I'm trying to think of what other, like sometimes they put it in the README. So there's a variety of places that it might show up, but it looks kind of like this. So it's generally here's the version. Sometimes people set the date, sometimes they don't. But then it's a list of here are the things that you might care about. And so I am not going to spend time staring at this on stream, but I went through all of these and checked out what each of these bulleted items said. And I thought for my project, thankfully it's small enough that I can fit this JavaScript part in my head, and realized that no, none of these seem to apply to me. Also, things to look out for with these kind of changelogs is there's a couple things. You should watch out for anything that says like breaking. Is a common pattern that will be put into changelogs, is to pay attention to there's some kind of change that is probably not backwards compatible, and you might need to update your code if you're using that piece. Another thing that you should pay attention for is anytime you see like a version number that's these 3 parts, it's usually like it's most likely semantic versioning. And the short name for that is semver. And there's a whole, I think there's a whole site about semantic versioning. So yeah, semver, which can define what semantic versioning is supposed to mean. Now, in theory, semantic versioning is summed up in this. Like if you change the first number, you are saying that there is some breaking change that people should be prepared for, that they're going to have to change their code in order to upgrade to the new version. That's what the major version is supposed to mean. A minor version is not breaking changes, but could just be regular updates of here are some new features, here are some bug fixes. And then patch is like if you have some very small thing that maybe you had a release and you had a regression that you didn't anticipate, and so you do a patch version to fix something for backwards compatibility. That's what semver is in a nutshell. Now, in practice, this is just a convention, and so semver, depending on the project, can be a lie, or a difference, maybe more charitably, a difference in perspective. What might be a major breaking change from your point of view is different from what I would think would be a breaking change. So exercise caution when you're looking at semver. I think there's even some famous posts about this. Let's see, semver is a lie. I think this is a one that I've heard before. I'm looking for, there were some people that I respect that have a very negative opinions of semver, but I can't find those articles right now. That's okay. Anyway, so when you're looking at versioning, if it's got that 3-number style, it's probably trying to be semver, and so you can read that as appropriate. So for me, I am currently on htmx 1.10, and I'm trying to upgrade to the latest, and you can see that it says 1.80. So it's a signal to me that nothing major has changed, that it's unlikely that I have to change my code. It's most likely that I'm just getting some upgrades and bug fixes, which, as I read through this changelog, did appear to be the case. I didn't feel like I had to change any of my code. All right, so for my project then, I think the thing we need to do is upgrade the package. And the way I've been handling that, and there are lots of ways you could do this, this is just the approach that I have taken for this project since I don't have a lot of code, is I have actually been committing the JavaScript file to my repository. So let's go into the static directory where all my stuff is. And then we'll go into the JS directory. And I saw out of the corner of my eye there's some kind of notification. So if somebody joined in or subscribed, thank you. I've got to get a second monitor so I can better monitor like what's going on there. I appreciate whatever that was. The notifications I get over there are generally nice things. So thank you so much. But you can see here, like what I've done is I've literally committing this file. Like there's a history here on this file that I can look at when I added it back in February of 2021. That's been how long since I added it. So I don't update this often, and my versioning, my management of JavaScript is very simple. I was about to say naive, but it's not naive. It's just a simple problem because I don't have complex needs for my application. So what I want to do is swap this. I want to say there's a couple of things we need to do. So we've got let's do two different things here. First, actually, let's go back up and have this open and look for. I'm going to look in the code. There's probably one reference here. We're going to look for htmx 1.1.0. Yep, it's in the base template. So we have to update this. So we're going to do this to 8. And then we're going to remove static JS htmx 1.1.0. Okay. And then we can go get the new version. So let's see. Docs, installing. There's probably places where you can get it. Download a copy. So let's download from unpackage. What's this? It's already like minified. I assume. Okay, good. It's got 180 in the URL, so we know it's the right one. I don't want to keep it as just htmx min. I want this to be very version specific so I know in the future. So let's save this page as, and we're going to save it. Wow, it's got no tag on it. It's so weird. I need to configure my new Mac to show extensions or something. Putting it in downloads, sure, that's fine. Okay. And then we'll move this from the downloads directory and we will put it into static JS as htmx 1.8.0.min.js. Whoops, min.js. Okay, so we've got clearly the one's deleted, the other one is added, and we've got the modification to the base template, which is hard to see because there's a bunch of junk there, but there's at the bottom. All right, now this one I do want to like actually poke the site a little bit, make sure some of these things are still working and there's no surprises. So let's start up the web server. Come over here and load up the new thing. Did it? Let's see. Did it reload? Yep, it did. So there's that. We can go to somewhere. Nope, not where I want to go. Oh, that's funny. I'm about to get locked out of my own trial thing here. We should change that. Let's do that now before I forget. Counts. Let's change this to exempt. Exempt is like super special secret thing that bypasses all of the rules and means that I don't have to, it essentially opts me out of the whole account lifecycle flow. So that message should go away. Okay. Where can we test this out? One place we could test this out is there should be tasks on here, and these up-down buttons are using htmx. So moving this down It did. I don't know why it jumped. That was a weird jump. Oh, it was probably trying to jump to that. Okay. That's something I should fix. It's jumping to this hash indicator. What's this called? URL fragment. But what it's not accounting for is the spacing around it, so it looks weird. So it's like actually, if I did that, wait, did I click that? Yeah, like trying to jump to the spot, but it can't. There's not enough tasks. Anyway, it's clear that that's working. That's an htmx feature. Let's come back here. Let's go to the bulk page and add a new task and use the bulk create. And so if we come down to, this will add more if I, just enter into this thing. So we've got some stuff. Anytime you get it, you give focus to this thing. That was htmx that loaded in a new set. Okay, that gives me enough confidence that this bit is working. So I think I'm happy with that upgrade. And it'll be one that I can check off. So we'll say upgrade htmx to 1.8.0, which fixes, what number is this? 475, which has been open for over just about a year. Fixes 475. Cool. All right, what's next? What else was driving me crazy that I wanted to check on? And there's some that are hard to check on stream because they might involve looking at sensitive kind of data. But there's some that are not. And there are also some that are low value that I don't know that I want to do them. Let me think for a moment. Yeah, let's do this one. It's not super high value, but it can show the importance of some parts of this. Okay, so what is this? There is a page in the app called the forecast page. And it's the school year forecast. Okay. Let's look at the app. Start the web server again. And let's close this. So the forecast page is this. It is, now you can see the message from earlier. And it says, view school year projected completion dates. So this is requested by multiple users of mine. And essentially what they need is, this is all, remember, well, maybe you've never been on stream before. This homeschool application is all about supporting scheduling for homeschools. And some things that homeschool teachers, educators, whoever that is in the household, need to do is know, like, when's my work scheduled to end, especially with my application. Like with other apps, the way many of these apps are designed is it's fixed events on fixed dates. So you can know exactly when a schedule is supposed to end because you're the one that put that task on that last date. The downside of that approach, and the reason that my wife uses my application, is that if you get any of those dates wrong, you end up shuffling things around. You're constantly moving dates to make sure your system tracks with what you actually did. And where School Desk is different is that the entire schedule is completely dynamic. And that has the benefit of you can complete a task and it just will fill in the right way for the next one. The downside of that approach is that it's not as obvious when the last task is going to be slated for. So you slot in, and let's make this example concrete. Maybe you have a school year. Let's for sake of convenience, let's say it's on the calendar year, so it's January to December, and you have a course that's math, and you want it to run all the way until before Christmas holiday, or the holiday season in December. And so you want to end like December 15-ish. So you want to be able to project out, like, how many tasks do I need? And so you could do that math. You could say, well, I have this many weeks, and I know that my math is going to be this many days, so it's going to be, I need this many activities in order to fill out that math year. The problem with that is, like, it is a rough number, but it doesn't account for when's your family going on vacation. It doesn't account for how many days of the week do you want to run. Are you running this? Is it running 5 days a week? 4, 3, 2, 1? So there's a lot of variance that can happen to know, like, when is the actual expected day going to be done. And so that's what this forecast does, is it looks at all those numbers. The challenge is that it's possible right now to get to this forecast page and not have any things to forecast. If we look at the template, which is what I just had up, that what we may have is that there are either no students, or even if there are students, there may be no courses that a student is attached to for the year. And when you're designing an application, one of the worst experiences that you can design for is to have a scenario where your user clicks on the page and then there's nothing on the page, like there's no data. This is extremely common for new users who are just starting with the site. Maybe they're inspecting things, maybe they're visiting and trying to figure out, like, what's going on with this one. And so you want to have what I call empty states, and that might be a term that I got from my past job from working with a product person, so maybe this is more common terminology than I realize. But you essentially want to have a placeholder for when there's no data. Inform the user of, hey, you got to this page, but there's nothing to see right now. If you want to see something, do this, take this action, and, like, maybe I have a call to action on doing something. And I have a bunch of those empty states in the application, but I don't have it for this forecast page. Right now, if you don't have any students or you don't have any courses, then you're just going to get this title at the top. It will have this, but it would just be completely empty here, which I think is silly. So what we want to do is modify this page. We can keep the forecast page, the forecast header itself, which is the top part. I don't know why this paragraph tag is here. That seems kind of dumb, but I maybe put it in here as a crude spacer, if any, is my guess. And then have this data that's rendered. So what we want to do is we essentially want to have like an if guard, an if in the template that says, if empty state, show this thing, otherwise show the actual forecast. So it's going to take two things. We're going to need to modify the Python code to actually inject this extra context information, and then we're going to have to modify the template. So let's first look for where that forecast is generated. Probably somewhere in the schools app, but I'm going to look for that HTML fragment. So we've got two things. We've got our template, and then we've got this forecast page. Okay. So there are probably multiple ways that that I could do this. I'm trying to think of what is the easiest way. The absolute easiest way that is a little crude would be this. We'll say, let's do it like this. We're going to say empty is equal to true. And we will only make it false when here, empty equal false. So that's saying that we're not going to show the empty state if you have any courses defined, because it means there's at least one thing to forecast. There are maybe some downsides to this approach, like how could this approach fail? If you have students but no courses, is that empty? I mean, it kind of is, like there's no forecasts. But I feel like if I try to put it up here, the logic would get really fuzzy when I get down here. So this is like the dumbest way to do this. Because the reason I'm saying it's dumb is because it's setting this Boolean over and over and over again, and like potentially just setting false, 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 and many times. So you might want to have this like after the data structure is built. That might be better. But maybe it's not better. So here's what I was thinking. You could wait till this whole like data structure is built. This data structure is what's used in the template. It's got the nested loops here. There's this student info and then course info. So if we don't do it this way and we wait till after, then we have to inspect this student info, this students list. And what would that be? Like that would be, so if not students, that would be the easiest thing. Like you just don't have any students to check on. But what I just said is like, that's not enough. Like you might want to only show, or you might want to show the empty message when there is an actual, when there are no actual courses. So if you have students, but there's no courses, then what would you see? Like you would see, actually we could probably represent this. If we had students but no courses, it would look like this. So I hope you agree that, well, that's not any better. Like you really need to see this course information. So in that scenario, if we were doing it afterwards, we'd have to check like it's not any students, or and then within here loop through, so some kind of not any, I mean, maybe this is okay. I'm going to write it out and see if I like it or hate it. This is what I think it would be. Then empty equal true. So it's sort of the like inverted logic. You either have empty equal, you start off with assuming that it's going to be empty, and then you're trying to negate that by encountering a course, or you're assuming that it's not empty, and then that you go in there and prove that it is empty. So it's different ways to think about it. And this actually is not so bad now that I get it this way. And so what is a good quality about doing it this way versus the other way? There's two different options here. One thing that I like about this version is that even though the if statement is more complex, it's all the logic is together. And actually, in fact, we can even simplify this. We'll get this simpler. I'm definitely going to go this route. The downside with this approach up here, this what I call dumber version, is that you've already got this fairly long loop that's already constructing this thing, and okay, that's like you're now mixing in, do this extra bit of logic along the way is like a thing to do, a little sidecar thing. And I think that's kind of weird. So let's take that out. And let's do this. And I don't even know that we need this first condition, because, well, we might. Let's check the Python. So what is any of an empty list? Is that true or false? False. So if there's no students, then this any would be iterating over an empty list, which is going to be false, and then we'd want to negate that to show the empty state. So I don't think we even need this check. We get it down to this. All right, so we're getting closer. So now we have it down to not any of this stuff. And we're setting that to be true. All right, but look at all we're doing here. We have a Boolean here. We're doing a Boolean test, and then we're setting a Boolean inside of it, and that's it. So if you ever encounter a scenario like this, where you're doing an if guard and you're either setting or returning a Boolean, then you should just, instead of setting false and true explicitly, reduce it to set the variable to whatever's in the if clause. And in this case, we actually want the opposite. So when this is true, we want true. Okay, so no, this is not, we don't want the opposite. What we want is this. Let's delete these. Show empty. And then we'll delete the colon. So we've got that. So that's the variable that we want. And now we can finish it off by putting it in here and say show empty with that variable, show empty. All right, but we can go one step further here. Like, look what black did. So black is going to enforce that this is all the line, and this variable is this one thing. So we can take that, and we can take this and put it at the end and kind of inline it. So we went from like 2 lines that were spread out, and then we got it down to, okay, well, let's cluster it here in 3 lines, and then like, because it was clustered, I was able to see, oh, wait a minute, this is just a Boolean based on a Boolean check condition, which means that I can simplify it to be that one variable. And then once the variable is there, then you can get rid of the variable. And so you actually get it down to just this one statement there. Now, that may not be your preference. Maybe you look at this and you're like, whoa, that's a little dense. So for me, this is okay. I look at this and like, I see this and it seems okay. And since I'm the one that has to maintain this, I'm okay with this. But that was my logic for how I got there. So we want to come over here, and now we're going to check. We're going to have our if statement. Whoops. If show empty. Otherwise, do this. And so our whole for loop goes inside here. And I like to give these things a little bit of white space. They don't necessarily need it, but sometimes it makes for easier copying in the future. And for the moment, let's just do like a paragraph tag that says this was empty. Okay. If I did it right, we won't see that when we refresh the page because there was some stuff to forecast. So still forecasting that. So here's where we want to be able to test out, is this correct or not? So how can we do that? I think what we can do is create another school year. So let's create a school year from August, I don't know, let's do it like a week after this. So August 22 to 24. Go over here. We'll say 8/22/2023 to 8/22/2024. And it doesn't, you can see it doesn't give us the option yet because it didn't make sense. So there are some conditions that I have in here, but it's when there is enrollment, so that's the empty states of possibility. So let's add a grade level and say 5th grade. I think that'll be what my son will be in next year. And so now we have this page. Aha, here we go. So here's the empty state. Nobody's enrolled. There are no students yet, so there's nothing to show. There's also no courses, so it's like this is definitely the right time. So somebody might like create this school year, so you can kind of maybe put yourself in somebody's shoes of like they sign up, they create a school year, they don't bother creating a course or a task, they're not ready to do that. They haven't added any users, and then they see like, oh, what is this thing? And they click it, and there's no data. And that's just going to be where it's disappointing. So this is what I mean by empty state. So we want to put something here that will be like representative. Let's look through the existing SVGs that I have. A lot of the times for these empty states, I like to put an SVG in there as a way to liven it up a little bit and give it a little bit of life. So I have a handful of SVGs, and maybe we can reuse one of those. So let's open that static directory, and we've got blank canvas, bundle, celebrate, children, course, finish line, font, grade level, mail, progress, questions, studying, time to do. Okay. So this one's feeling the most right to me, but we also just saw that on the grade level page. So let's go to this site where I get these things from, and we'll see if maybe there's some better options. So the site I've used for a lot of these is called Undraw. It's someone who makes their stuff available, and it was done by, well, there used to be like a credit page for this person. Well, I wanted to give credit to the person who makes this. I think her name is Katarina. Yeah, Katarina Limpunsuni. So thank you, Katarina, for doing Undraw stuff. But okay, let's talk about what Undraw is. Undraw is this cool like search engine on these SVG icons, and they have a style. Not everybody's crazy about the style. That's all right. It works for me. And what I like about it is that I am not a super talented artist, especially in the realms of SVG. Like I do have talents in art in other places, but not in this realm. And so Katarina has made these available free for download, and you can search for things that are relevant. On top of that, there's this cool little color selector, and so you can change the color. Maybe let's change over here. That'll be easier to see. So you can change the color to match the theme of your site, which is awesome. So the way I've done a lot of my SVGs is I pick the primary color, which is my blue here. I never remember the color title. So, oh, come on. Don't want the layout. Or what? What's going on here? One of these is the blue. What's the deal? There it is, blue 700. Now, it's in RBG mode here, a calculation, so it got harder to figure this out. But you can figure out what that hex is, and you can plop it into here, and then you can get an SVG icon that will match the style of your site. So let's search for empty. And here's a good example of an empty state. It's like, there's no results yet, but it would be pretty boring if there was nothing to see. So they're like saying, hey, it's kind of a very subtle call to action, telling you, we're waiting on you. So let's look for empty. The blank canvas one has changed. That's interesting. Void? Jeez. Dark. All right. I don't actually want to use these right now. Really, is like, if there was something that jumped out immediately, it'd be like, okay, let's do that. But that's kind of cool, but not really. Not really what I'm looking for. This page that I am looking at, that is needing an empty state, is like so infrequently going to be the case that it's empty here that I'm not really too concerned about it. Let's see if I can find. Actually, let's use the same blank canvas SVG as that other page. I might even use it a couple times. Nope, just one spot. Wow, really? So let's put it in. We need a div for it. So div class max width large, and end that, and then take the blank canvas image and see what that'll do. Hopefully it'll be like full size and I won't have to adjust it. Oops. We're done with this. Okay, cool. And we can put a very simple message here. So I think that's still too big. We don't need this to be huge. Oh, right, doesn't refresh my templates. Bleh, yuck. I remember this from the other night. So we need to touch a Python file so that it will actually reload. Doesn't matter. There we go. That's a decent size. And then we can add a little paragraph that says, what should it say? your school year has no courses yet. Please add a course to get a what? Forecasted completion date. Oh man, that's terrible. That's truly awful, but maybe it'll work enough. And we're going to need a class, and I suspect that class right there is what we want. So let's yank inside there, put that on that paragraph tag, and come over to this. Yep, okay. Your school year has no courses yet. Please add a course to get a forecasted completion date. So maybe those are 2 paragraphs. Try this. Yep, that's what I want. And we need more space between the paragraph. Maybe just, I don't know, let's try a 6. Cool. Dunsky. So now we have a message. Again, I don't think people will hit this most of the time, but at least they'll have a clue. Even if the text is, the copy is pretty weak. Forecasted completion date is really clunky. And even, it's not even wrong, right? It's forecasted completed date, not data. Okay. But we can go back to the regular school year and see this. So we've got this right. All right. So we need one. I need to put one more thing in here to actually do this properly. We've tested this out manually, but I want to ensure that this is tested out behaviorally via automated tests. So we need to go to the school tests, school test views, look for forecast. Here it is. Oh my, there's a single test in here. I don't know. Do I really care? I guess I want to assert self. I want to assert that this is true. I know it's true in right now. So we want to say show empty. That's it. That's the assert, because that'll be a true false. So that should work. What? Show empty is false? Huh? Why is that false? Because we're asserting, here's a course right here. What the heck? Huh? Oh, no. Yeah, okay. That's right. I'm not thinking. Show empty. That is the showing the empty state. And we don't want to show the empty state because there's a course. Okay. So that's the logic. We could, all right, test. I guess we need a test for the other. to show that we get the whole thing. So test empty. The empty state appears when there are no courses. So we want all this stuff from up here. Except we don't actually need this part. We do want a student. So that's what the enrollment's getting us. So there'll be a grade level. And then we don't, this other test is actually doing most of the proper checking on all the context data, which is what I typically do when I have this test get method. I put it all in there. And so that's that. But we can get rid of all of this stuff. And we should be able to say show empty. And it should be true. Cool. So we've got our new test that asserts, so we've got both the when is it false and when is it true scenarios. Kind of cover the basis for that. All right, let's make sure that the whole test suite is happy. I have no reason to believe it won't be, but it's a good sanity check, and my test suite's pretty fast, especially on this M1 Mac. We've got full coverage. Here's the whole feature finished out. All right. Got the new tests, checking the data for both false, true, and false states. We have the modification to the context, which turned out to be a one-line change reformatted by black. So, you know, I guess it's technically a 4-line or 5-line change, but very managed. The diff is a little hard to read. Here's a cool tip. If you have not experienced this in GitHub, there's a way to turn off blank space changes and to see whether your diff is only affected by blanks or not. Actually, that's I wonder if that's in diff itself. That'd be super cool. Blank. It might just be a feature of GitHub. Ignore blank lines. No, that's not it. Okay. Let's see. I'm fascinated by the possibility of this. Git diff ignore white space. Oh. Okay, so maybe git diff. Oh, that's so cool. Sorry. This is new to me. But I've been used to using this at on GitHub itself. On GitHub, if you go to a diff page, so let's say you've created a pull request, and you add to the end of your URL, if you go on and tack on question mark W equal 1, it will tell the diff page to do what you just saw, which is to ignore white space. And this is really useful if ever you're taking a chunk of existing code and just indenting it by one level, which is exactly what I did with this template. That for loop, I didn't modify at all. And so here's the change. Like, you can very clearly see what's happening here. We're adding one if, we're adding an else, and the for loop is inside the else now. But when we're looking at the git diff, which is just what I have as GD, you can see that it's just like way messier because it's trying to figure out what am I doing with this indentation stuff. It looks like it's making a difference, and when it's really not. I'm curious if is git diff W? Oh, that's super strange. That's not what I anticipated. So I have some aliases, and I was wondering what GWD would do. That's word diff. Okay, that's not what I was looking for. Alias. Let's grep for diff. See if any of these are about words. No? Okay. Sadly, but that's not bad. I can do GD-W. I'm going to file that one away. That's useful to know. Okay, cool. So let's take this feature and commit it. And we will say add empty state to forecast page, which fixes number 383. Knocking out some old ones today from April last year. Oh, really? April of last year? Holy cow. Okay. I mean, it wasn't important, like I said, so this is just kind of something fun to do to clean up some stuff. All right. I think that's a good enough stopping place for this evening. So let's think back. We upgraded a Heroku stack. The benefit of having tests is huge to have confidence in that change. And the deploy was pretty clean. Note when you're making big infrastructure changes that you should definitely try and minimize what the things that are actually changing. So if something does go wrong, then you get a clear picture of this is what happened, and that's useful. Then we did the upgrade to htmx, and we looked through the changelog, and because I have less confidence in my JavaScript changes, and it's kind of, I actually don't know how to test htmx changes right now. I should probably research that. That was what the way that we went about it. We looked at how to look at a changelog, how to make an assessment on that, and then we poked at it to see that it's right. And then we finally talked about empty states and how to clean out, or what to do when you have no data on a page. How do you not disappoint your users? So that's where I'll stop for this evening. Thank you for tuning in. I will be back, should be back. Actually, no, next week I'm out for my local Python meetup, but I should be back in a couple weeks. We'll probably pick up more of these. I thought about even maybe showing y'all how I do some of my documentation and market research. It may not be exciting enough to actually do that though. Eventually we'll get back into a bigger feature. Still, I'm not ready to commit to that. I've got a bunch of other things going on in my life that I don't want to have to think about a big project with school desk at the same time. Dylan, thank you. I appreciate that. If you all are joining for the first time, you can give me a like, or even if you're really interested, you could subscribe. That'd be awesome. And I do want to say thank you to, I've got some patrons and on Patreon, so you can join them at patreon.com/mblayman if you want. So I want to say thank you to Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Ryan, Patrick, Eric, Fred, Aaron, Philip, Miguel, Shivan, and Monty. All of those people contribute some small amount of money, and I'm super grateful for that because it enables me to buy lights, buy cameras, buy monitors that all go into making this whole setup possible. So very, very grateful for all of you. Thank you so much. Hopefully you'll learn a little something this evening, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.